Hey everybody, this is Jeremy Siskind. I got these books, Playing Solo Jazz Piano Fundamentals. They're available on my website and on Amazon. And today I want to talk about some of the aspects of the pentatonic scale. I know the pentatonic scale is like one of the first things that we generally use for improvisation, and it's so incredibly useful. It's great for funk, it's great for rock. It's used a ton in modal jazz by people like McCoy Tyner and Chick Corea. And the pentatonic scale is a big part of the blues scale. So maybe I'm going to start by first going over some of the basics of pentatonic theory and naming as far as I understand it. And then I want to talk about a couple of the special aspects to highlight that will be useful in your improvisation. So let's dive in. All right, so let's talk in the key of C. Let's see, is this all working? Cool. So we have a major pentatonic and a minor pentatonic. And let's start with the major pentatonic. If we're thinking about the major scale, we'll be using the 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 of the major scale. So this is a C major pentatonic. 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 of the major scale. And what this essentially does is it removes the two notes of the scale that have some amount of conflict. We could probably have a debate about exactly what that means, but I think we could agree, well, I'm sure we could agree that the fourth note of the scale conflicts with the major triad, right? And the seventh note of the scale we use a lot in jazz, but inherently it's conflicting. And it's no coincidence that both of these notes are at places where there's a half step in the scale, right? There's a half step between E and F, and so we remove the F, and there's a half step between B and C, so we remove the B. So the beautiful thing about this is that any of these notes are going to sound very consonant. They're not going to rub up against any of the notes of the triad by a half step. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. And I believe that this is also true against the 4 chord. No, it's not. We have an E natural. All right. Now, our minor pentatonic scale, I'm first going to show you that we use the major pentatonic can be used, the pitches of the major pentatonic can be used to form the minor pentatonic in the relative minor. So if we start this C major pentatonic, these same 5 notes from A, we get A minor pentatonic. And I'm going to compare this to the A major scale. It's going to be, of course, the 1, the flat 3, the 4, the 5, and the flat 7. That's compared to the A major scale. And so just so that we can see it in C, if we wanted to do C minor pentatonic, then we would have C, E flat, F, G, B flat. How am I getting those notes? I'm using that same formula of 1, flat 3, 4, 5, and flat 7. Cool. Now, the relationship between the pentatonic scale and the blues scales is very important because each of these pentatonic scales just adds one note and becomes either our major blues scale or our minor blues scale. I've talked before about those terms. I don't love the term minor blues scale, but we're going to use it, and it correlates really nicely with major pentatonic and minor pentatonic. So to turn this C major pentatonic into C major blues, if you like to call it that, for this scale called the sweet scale or the bright blues scale, whatever terminology you want is fine. We're going to add the sharp 2 or flat 3, whichever way you want to think about it. That same pitch is going to be added to the minor pentatonic scale to create what I just call the blues scale, but some people call the minor blues scale. again, between relative major and relative minor, you've got the same pitches creating these two scales. Excuse me. I'm gonna clear my throat here. And this is, we could call it the sharp 4 or the flat 5. I have no skin in the game as to which one you call it. I write it as the sharp 4 because then we don't have to put a natural on the 5th. In this context, it's ascending, but it doesn't have to. So for C minor pentatonic, it would be this F sharp. Okay, so what I want you to take away from this section is that within every blues scale, there is a pentatonic scale. I'll say it one more time. Within every blues scale, there's a pentatonic scale. Now, it's maybe too obvious to say, but I think it's fair to say that we call the pentatonic scale the pentatonic scale because it has 5 notes. I know, people who watch this channel are way too smart. You're like, duh. Okay. And I think that's absolutely the case. But just for argument's sake, I want to propose one other aspect of this that makes it pentatonic, that relates to 5. And that is this, that the scale is made up of fifths. So if we start on C and we go up by fifths, this is going to be a few ledger lines, that's an E up there, we actually get the 5 notes of the pentatonic scale, C, G, D, A, and E. They're not in order yet, but we're getting those 5 crucial notes that make up the pentatonic scale. And this is one of the reasons that this pentatonic scale sounds so kind of open, non-dissonant, right? So C is here. You guys don't need me to do this. You see it. D, A, and E. If that helped anybody, that's a miracle, because that is a terrible diagram, but that's okay. You're not here for the artwork. You're here for these revelations. Now, so this is just kind of interesting in and of itself. But the reason why I find it interesting is that scale patterns don't really work the same way for the pentatonic scale, right? Because it's a lumpy scale. When we do like interval practice on a C major scale, we'll divide it up in very predictable ways. Right? I'm practicing skipping one note, coming back, and it's always a third. Or I'll skip 2 notes, come back, and it's always a fourth. The pentatonic scale combines, it's some steps, some skips. So it's not going to be predictable quite in the same way. So how do we practice interesting interval alternatives? I think we can use this aspect of the scale, that it ascends by fifths. And by the way, and this is going to come into play later, we know because a fifth up is equivalent to a fourth down, right? C up to G is a fifth, and C down to G is a fourth. We, I think, can figure out, whoa, sorry about that. Super professional here, as always. We can figure out that if we can start on C and ascend by fifths, we can start on C and descend by fourths, and we'll get all of those same pitches. And this goes low enough that I'm going to use bass clef, right? We get the exact same sequence of pitches going up by fifth or down by fourth. So here's what I suggest for you all as you practice this scale, is you practice leaping up in fifths. Now, you are going to come to one place in the scale where you don't have a fifth, but we're going to leap up by fifths. So C, A, G, I'm writing the notes of the pentatonic scale here, and then you could keep going down, C, A, etc. And then we're going to leap up each one. I'll do this in red just so it looks a little bit different. Okay, so above this G, we can go to D. But above this E, a fifth above that would be B natural, right? And we can't do that. That's not in the pentatonic scale. So we'll leap to C instead. We have to fudge it because, as I said, the scale is lumpy. Okay, so we're going. Cool. And then I'll do this in blue. We'll fill in, we'll basically go stepwise, whatever that might mean in terms of the actual intervals within the pentatonic scale to the next note. So I'm going to fill in all these. Oh, I missed one here. And we get this actually really nice exercise. Pretty nifty. Okay, very useful to practice, both for major pentatonics and minor pentatonics. I guess if I just did C major, I technically also did. I also did A minor there, or it could be C minor. Right? Okay. And then, of course, we said that we could also go a fourth down. So, again, I'm just writing out first the notes of the pentatonic scale. And then in red, we'll put the notes down a fourth. Okay, so this E doesn't have any notes down a fourth, so I'm going to go down a third instead. So, okay, and then in blue, I'm going to, again, fill in these notes that are in between. Here, there's only going to be 2 notes in between each because we're going a fourth instead of a fifth. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so if I were going to notate this, I'd probably just make them like 8th notes or 16th notes or something like that. So this goes beautifully into these groups of 4. This one, you know, maybe you'd want to play it as like a 8th plus a triplet. Or if you want to get really crazy, you can try to play it as an even 5 tuplet. Or so the reason that I bring this up is, you know, you could use this as a pattern to just like learn how to shred, and that's cool. I'm all for shredding. It's not really what I do. I'm very mediocre at it. But I see a lot of students who, when they're playing the blues scale or the pentatonic scale, are not really capable of using leaps, and they improvise very stepwise, going from note to note of the scale. So playing. Right, this is a really boring solo because all I'm doing is I'm going from one note to the very next note, either up or down of the scale. You're not going to accomplish much like that. So this is a good way to practice leaping. So if I'm playing. Now I'm finding these more interesting shapes within the scale. And just because I kind of instinctively did it, let me show you maybe a kind of fun next step. I haven't really thought this through, so bear with me. This is just a total experiment. But you could also practice leaping 2/4. But let's start somewhere else where we're not going to have to change the pattern too fast. Let's start. So I'm leaping up 2/4. Well, this didn't help. This is not 2/4 anymore just because there's not a fourth above the C, so it's a fourth and a third. But here we go, we've got 2/4 again. A third plus a fourth. So now I'm practicing 2 leaps in a row. These are all the places where I'm practicing 2 leaps in a row. Here we go, now we got a couple of fourths also. this translates directly into the blues scale. And so this can really liven up and give you a lot more variety in your blues playing. All right, so the overall message here. Let's see. Let's go to a different view for this conclusion. Not that one. Is that you can use this property of the pentatonic scale that is made up of all fifths, or conversely, all fourths, and use that to find some patterns to practice. And remember that the pentatonic scale is hidden within the blues scale. So if you learn good patterns for pentatonic scales, you learn good patterns for blues scales. If you want to support me, the best way is to like, subscribe, comment, and check out these books. Oh, I'm rusty on my YouTube pointing. Playing Solo Piano, Jazz Piano Fundamentals, they're available through my website, jeremysiskind.com. And I'll have more great stuff for you over here soon. See you later.